Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Schoenfelder, and I lead our accessibility and inclusion program here at Worldwide Technology. So I'm very excited to welcome you, both those in person and all those online. And I'm going to turn over to Rachel, because Rachel is my partner at Starkloff as we put this program together. Rachel?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for coming out. We're starting just a little bit late today. Don't you love technology? I don't. That's the joke. I don't love technology. But as Jessica introduced, my name is Rachel Goldmeyer, and I work at Starkloff Disability Institute as the Universal Design Program Coordinator. A brief physical description of myself is I am a 5'5" white woman. I'm a millennial. I look young-ish. I've got curly brown hair. I wear glasses, brown eyes, and I'm wearing a black and gray sweater dress today. You know, when I first thought of this three-part series of the past, present, and future of universal design in St. Louis, I thought what it was to be born and raised in St. Louis, and to be born and raised as somebody with disabilities. At a young age, I had a stroke, and I had multiple learning disabilities, and I really got to see all of the different ways my environment was not necessarily equipped to be thinking about me and incorporating me in. And throughout this three-part series, I've really been thinking about my own past, present, and future in terms of my disability journey. And it has been magnificent to see all the people that have come out. In our first part of the three-part series, we kicked it off with the past of universal design at Soldiers Memorial Military Museum all the way back in May. Our second part, the present of universal design in St. Louis, happened at Paraquad in August. But today, we are really facing towards the future and thinking about what the future could hold for us. So as part of this future event, entitled Built for Everyone, the Future of Universal Design in St. Louis, we're going to have three fantastic presentations looking at three different areas of the future of universal design in St. Louis. We are going to be looking at travel and transportation. We're going to be looking at residential living and, of course, public spaces and parks, and learning about what these things could look like moving forward. After those presentations, we'll have a brief break, panel discussion, followed by question and answer. For anyone who might be new to universal design, our first presentation is going to cover it in more depth, but I just wanted to say really quickly that universal design is all about creating products, environments, and experience that can be enjoyed by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized designs. It's about designing for real life, real experiences for all ages, abilities, backgrounds, and ensuring inclusion is proactively built in from the start. Today, we are excited to feature three amazing presenters and panelists who've been my partners in crime throughout this process. We've got Bart Van Vliet, Peter Utrecht, and Amy Gilbertson, who will be sharing their insights with us throughout our event today. This event is a hybrid format, so we are both in person and online today, and we have some wonderful and very talented ASL interpreters with us for both formats, and we will also be offering continuing education units and event completion certificates through the American Institute of Architects. We're also recording today's event, and we will get that recording out to folks after we have it professionally captioned. Please note it might take a couple of weeks to get out the continuing education units, the certificates, as well as the recording. So we are so grateful for your patience. But with all of that said, I'm very, very excited to kick us off with our first presenter today, introducing from HOK, Bart Van Vliet, who will be talking about transportation and travel moving into the future in St. Louis. Take it away, Bart.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel. So I want to talk a little bit about universal design in general and then transportation. I will describe myself as well. 6'2", I'm Dutch. Accent probably already gave that away. Bald, got a short gray beard, and I'm wearing a black jacket. So if you hear the rustle during the panel discussion, that's me. And let's see, I'm doing the forward with this, right, Rachel? Yeah. Okay, and so this universal design, it says aviation. Rachel talked about transportation in general, and of course aviation is a big part of it. So I want to go through a couple of sections really in this presentation. So we do the introduction of me a little bit more, talk about the levels of design, and that's really where, you know, kind of talk about how universal design fits into sort of other strategies of making buildings inclusive. I want to focus a little bit on neurodiversity. That's something that HOK has spent quite a bit of time on. And I just want to give you a taste of the work that we've done and how that can apply to our projects. And then finally, show you a couple of airport projects and how we implement those strategies. So who am I and why I'm here? Well, of course I'm here because Rachel invited me, thank you, and Amy picked my brain as well. So, but I'm also here because I am practice leader for aviation and transportation principal with HOK, focused on aviation for the last 12 years and moved to St. Louis recently to work on the new airport project. So dedicated to that. So a little bit about HOK, if you don't know, we design airports around the country, all over the world. The one at the top left for you is Hamad International in Doha. Actually spent 4.5 years living there, working on that project. It's very exciting. You kind of see the variety of projects that we do. HOK has delivered 2 out of the 5 U.S. terminal projects in the last decade. That's over $2.5 billion. Now, airport projects obviously are typically large, but we like to do complicated and large projects. Okay, designing for inclusive environments. So the degrees of inclusive design, kind of at a simple level, there's obviously nuances to everything, but there's accessible design, universal design, equitable design. Kind of see those 3 steps in the progression of inclusivity. Accessible design is really about meeting codes, making sure you comply with ADA, federal law, building code. So you can imagine that perhaps there's a lower transaction counter at a desk, maybe even at the supermarket, but also at airports. And so it allows people with disabilities to participate and make use of buildings. But it feels a little bit like we're helping them by doing something extra. So that's kind of the bare minimum that we want to do. So what we want to get to is universal design, where we kind of treat everybody the same. So there is no separate ramp for people to come into the building. There is a ramp that everybody can use. So this is a project that HOK did at CTEC, that's the Seattle airport. And instead of putting in escalators, elevators, we just created this really long ramp with a very gentle slope that works for people with and without disabilities. So everybody is kind of using the building the same way. Everybody's access the same way. And then finally, equitable design. So just thinking about some of the disabilities or just the varieties of people that are not necessarily noticeable, that aren't physical. Want to create spaces that are equally accessible for people from all backgrounds, abilities, and kind of social and physical abilities. So this is kind of an example of where we'd be using maybe a variety of seating area, colors, different levels of sort of input, like sensory input for people, so you can kind of choose. You can use the building, going through a little quieter area, or going through the middle and kind of having all that sensory input. So hopefully that put kind of the universal design and why we're here today in a little bit of perspective. So neurodiversity is something that HOK has spent quite a bit of time on. You may have heard Kay Sargent talk. She's got books out. And it really applies to all sorts of building types. I'm thinking as an architect, so I'm really focused on buildings, but can obviously apply that to other forms of transportation, streetscapes, and things like that. And so the first thing I want to kind of show you is that the accepted average or estimate is that 1 in 5 people is neurodiverse. Now, when you look at that chart, it doesn't look like that because when we ask people, they actually tell us a different story. So when you look at neurotypical up on the upper right-hand corner, it's just under 30%. So that's very different than the 80% that supposedly is the norm. So there's a lot more nuance to it that we want to understand and understand how that impacts the way we design buildings. The other thing is that people don't all have just a single kind of aspect of neurodiversity. So it's not just that somebody is just autistic or has dyspraxia. That can happen, of course, but you can see in the comorbidity column that there's quite a few people that actually have a combination of those neurodiverse brains, and before that was sort of not allowed to be diagnosed that way. So I think we've come a long way there, but I think really pointing out that that what we think the norm is actually not quite the norm. It's a little more complicated than that. So pointing out the neurotypical and then just showing autism at over 25%, and this is kind of a post-COVID study from 24. So things have changed a little bit about how people kind of express themselves and their situation after that. This also gives an interesting, I think, outline of how people see themselves. And so these are all kind of taken February to April of 2024, but these are different sort of age groups. So on the left, we've got, people in their 20s, and all the way at the end, we've got people in their 60s. And you can see that people in their 60s don't think of themselves as neurodiverse as much as people in their 20s. And obviously, that is not because people are that different 60 years ago than now, right? It's just that it's accepted, and we actually want to understand because it helps everybody get people sort of fit into the built environment. So one quote we like to use is, when you design for the extreme, you benefit the mean. And what this really says is when we try to make accommodations for people with non-typical conditions, it actually helps everyone. So, the ADA kind of curb cuts that you have helps people with strollers, helps people that walk a little slow. Maybe you've got heavy shopping bags. So these things that we do for a specific group are actually used by everybody, and people like it. So that's kind of trying to change the thought about, is it really that we're making special accommodations, or are these special accommodations just revealing things that we should be implementing anyway? A little bit more on kind of the challenges. So neurodivergent people have different challenges than others, than neurotypical. And sound, temperature, and light are the top 3. So those are things that we can address mostly by architecture, building systems. And you can see all the way on the left, 66% of neurodivergent people have an issue with typical ways of how sound is dealt with in a building, and then it kind of goes down from there. 4 and 5 are a little harder to deal with. The number of people, 53% of neurodivergent people kind of tell us that they have either concern with being around a lot of people or concern about being around too few people, and then the proximity to others is is an issue as well. So how do we deal with that? You know, that's why we want to create spaces that have a variety of types of paths of travel. So it could be that, like I showed in that image, that the center is very stimulated, lots of stimuli coming in, and maybe the edges are a little quieter. And so giving people an option to move through the building the way they feel most comfortable. This is just kind of an overview of the things that HOK has done on neurodiversity. A lot of this is focused on neurodiversity in the workplace, so more commercial interiors. But all of these lessons really apply to our everyday life in all the buildings and spaces that we work in and move through. All of this is available on HOK's website, hok.com. May have to sign up with an email address, but it's freely available, and I invite you to have a look if you're interested. So how do we implement those ideas? So I'm talking about airports, and airports are really more, to me, civic spaces than buildings. So it's really thinking about almost like, you know, a little city, and how we design that to accommodate the variety of people. So 3 core principles that we use. Options and variety, talked about that a little bit. Choice and control. Now, control is the hardest in kind of a public building, because we don't want people like messing with the thermostats and light levels and things like that. But I think sometimes it's a sense of control, right? So if you can find a place where the settings are the way you would like them to be, that provides control, right? You can choose where you sit, where you go. And that kind of aligns with choice as well. So we're going to implement those core principles in our projects. Design strategies that we can use to implement those. Again, having an option, you know, spaces that allow you to move and fidget. So at airports, you know, a lot of people travel with kids. If you don't travel with kids, you wish that nobody traveled with kids. And you don't want the hold room or the gate lounge to become a playground. So finding spaces where, you know, kids and people can blow off some steam that isn't just in the seating area, right? Having an option for that is important. Dedicated spaces. Now you see a lot of sensory rooms being installed in airports. I don't think that's quite where we want to be in the end, but it's at least a place where people can go and sort of behave a little bit, maybe how they want to, where out in the kind of the public areas they might feel a little more constrained. So I think it's a step in the right direction, but we need to, you know, it's almost like the ADA approach to neurodiversity and not the inclusive design approach to neurodiversity. Access to daylight, you know, it's always a calming thing. Biophilia helps calm people down. Quiet rooms, you see them around airports. Sometimes they're called yoga rooms, sometimes they're called reflection rooms, but having a place where noise kind of gets drowned out and you can just take a break. Travel is very stressful. We're not going to be able to do much about the stress at the security checkpoint, but around there, want to make sure that there are these moments of respite where you can kind of calm down and then be on your next part of your journey kind of with a balanced sense. Space you can retreat in, we just talked about. Natural elements, we call that biophilia, so it's not necessarily having green plants, but it's kind of the sense of being in nature. Adjustable furniture. So in a lot of the airports, maybe from 10 years ago, it might still be depending on the airlines, you just see all the rows of, we call them gang seating, so all the chairs that are on a single beam, and it's all the same, and you don't have an option. Now you see much more that there are some lounge seatings, there are some high-top tables where you could work, so giving people a variety and making sure that that lack of variety doesn't end up resulting in stress. It's kind of the goal there. Reduced visual clutter. There's already a lot of things that people need to look at: signage, wayfinding, trying to find your gate, trying to find that place where you want to have some coffee. And so we try to reduce that. And I'm going to show that in a couple of slides, and I'm going to skip through that because I think I'm running a little long. So the first thing is that every place is unique. So when we design an airport, we run into a lot of the same issues, right? The problems are kind of typical. It's just that the solution is unique. And that's not just for the place, but it's of course for the people, right? The people that use Lambert Airport in St. Louis are different than the people that use SFO in San Francisco. And so we want to make sure that we design places for the people and for the place. Now, of course, we hope that lots of people from other parts of the country are coming to St. Louis, so you know it's a variety. But that's something that we want to make sure we think about. And so what we did in the couple of projects I'm going to show you. First one, LaGuardia, New York. So you see a lot of daylight, a lot of open spaces, a lot of wide circulation spaces. You can see on the wall there's art, kind of the building has a neutral palette, and then inside that we can create some diversity, some distractions, some interest, either with planting, with artwork, with daylight. And artwork also works really well as a wayfinding element. So what's sometimes difficult in an airport is to understand where you're supposed to be going, because you're always so focused on where you are and looking at all the signs and making sure you didn't miss one. As soon as we can provide a space that shows you already the next step in your journey beyond where you immediately are going, it gives you a sense of calm and it gives you a sense of direction. We also want people to move through the building quickly, right? Because we don't want people to get jammed up. But that helps with that sense of calm. Another project, Salt Lake City. If you've been there, you've probably noticed the canyon. That's what we call that image on the right. And we've got kind of full-scale artwork that kind of reflects, and there's changing colors from the light. And even though from here you can't go directly past that window, you got to go through security checkpoint on the right. Again, you can see daylight in the distance. You can kind of see where you're going, and you can see your destination. The other thing I think that's interesting about Salt Lake City is, unfortunately, pictures without many people, but they have some very specific needs. So they've got Mormons that go on missions, and then they come back, and they're greeted by an extended family, a whole big group. So what we did there is we created sort of this family room where people could wait for them. They're not standing in the circulation space. They're not blocking other people. They don't interfere with business travelers, and they can enjoy, you know, the welcoming back of the people that went on the mission. And then finally, just want to show a small project. This is Monterey, California, 5 gates. So it was really a little easier here. But what you can see on the left is there's only a curtain wall between the people that are on the land side, so haven't gone through security yet, might be, you know, waving their family goodbye, and the people that have already gone through security. So being able to come back and seeing your loved ones one more, you know, before you get on the plane, that's great. We avoided any level changes, so no ups and downs, and integration of nature was very important, both inside and outside, and try to kind of extend that with mass timber in the building structure. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Peter. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's see. Okay. First off, thank you to everyone at Worldwide Technology for hosting us today, and for the Starkloff Disability Institute for helping promote such an important topic that all too often gets overlooked and is becoming really, really important in today's life. So with that said, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Peter Utrecht, and I'm with Compass. That wasn't supposed to happen. I'm with Compass Design Build. My wife and I started our company back in 1999, and we are custom home builders and remodelers in the St. Louis area. About 10 years ago, we were looking at who our typical client was. And what we realized is that our client age range was in the 45 to roughly 60 age range. Well, about that same time, there was a topic that kept coming up in the residential world, and that was called aging in place. So we started doing a little research on aging in place, and we found that the Home Builders Association of St. Louis offered a certification called CAPS, which is Certified Aging in Place. So we did some quick research, and Jen and I both went to Kansas City for a 3-day program and became Certified Aging in Place specialists. And that was really the first time that we heard the term universal design. So there was no real discussion or interpretation of universal design during the class, but it was consistently brought up. So we thought, well, we better look into this a little bit more. So we studied a little bit about universal design and realized the importance of it, and now UD is basically the main focus of what we do. It is the criteria for what we use to design all of our custom homes and remodels as well. So I forgot to tell you my appearance. So I am a white male, 5'6", graying beard. I am a Gen Xer, probably borderline baby boomer, and I am wearing tan pants and a blue button-down shirt. So why does the future matter? The future matters because it's here. The future's here right now. By 2030, our youngest baby boomer will be 65 years old. 1 in 4 Americans, or maybe a little bit more than that, have some type of disability. So who benefits from universal design? This quick, easy answer, simple answer, is everybody. Everybody benefits from universal design. That's the mom pushing a stroller, holding a baby in one arm, pushing a stroller, maybe trying to carry groceries in. It's the athlete who just tore his knee out on the ski slope. It's someone who just had a hip replacement, cataract surgery, you name it. The importance of it now and why we need to plan now is because it's so much less expensive to do it at this point than to do it later on when you absolutely have to do it. So it's not a matter of when or if something's going to happen, it's a matter of when is something going to happen. So we had the privilege and the honor to work with Colleen Starkloff. I'm sure all of you know Colleen and her husband Max Starkloff started the Starkloff Disability Institute, and I call her the queen of universal design in St. Louis. I suppose that she noticed us as we were promoting universal design in our building, and she had called and she asked us to do a remodel for her and remodel her kitchen using all universal design principles. So I wanted to play about a 3-minute video of her kitchen remodel, and she's going to explain several of the features. We had the pleasure of meeting Colleen Starkloff, who's the executive director of the Starkloff Disability Institute, and she selected us to remodel her kitchen at her own home.
Universal design is a concept that looks for the creation of spaces and places so that everyone can use them with the least amount of adaptation or design.
I would say our new design focus is universal design.
After I made the choice to choose Compass, I literally felt relief.
It was very important for her to not only have a functional kitchen, but also have a beautiful kitchen.
I'd like to take you on a tour and show you how this kitchen works and all the universal features that were added into it and created for me by Compass Design Build. Many people in kitchens today have some kind of a switch on a back wall somewhere. That's not easily reachable by somebody who's seated. So why don't we make it convenient and also make it good looking? So we put the water faucet, the water mixing valve, and the garbage disposal control all in line. I asked the cabinet maker not only to give me a removable floor and removable doors, but I also told them that I have to have the toe kick installed in such a way with clips so I can easily pull it out and easily put it back in. Voila. Now you have a space that somebody in a wheelchair can pull right into, and in a matter of just a few minutes, I can take apart. The beauty of this induction cooktop is that it's very light to touch. It'll cook fast, so you better be on your toes because your food will cook really quickly. But induction won't burn you. A key feature of this kitchen is the fact that everything is within a very close reach range for somebody who's standing or seated. Many commercial operations have, like offices will have embedded receptacles in tables, work tables and workspaces. This one happens to be a very attractive pop-up electrical socket. And so that way I can reach back here to plug in my toaster, but if I'm seated, it would be a lot more convenient for me to plug the toaster in right here. We tried to decide where to put the microwave oven, and Jennifer came up with the idea of putting it underneath the this oven because it would work very well for a standing person or a seated person. Flexible use is a universal design feature, and there are a lot of ways to achieve it. One of the ways to do it is to have a workspace that will go up or down. You can set this little feature so that you can put it at the heights that you want. So the benefit of a shallow refrigerator, counter depth refrigerator, is that it's easier to reach things and pull things out. We separated the refrigerator and the freezer with a nice counter that has space where you can put something that you take out or something that you want to put into the refrigerator or the freezer, as well as gives additional storage in the drawer space and gave me some wine racks. I had some of my friends over to dinner who are all in their 80s, and I showed them all the features of my kitchen, and my friend Katie said how much she loved it and how much sense it made and how beautiful it is, and all of them were very jazzed about seeing my new kitchen and wishing they had one.
One of our funnest projects, working with Colleen. I wanted to point out just a few other universal design features just in this particular photo. So we had the pleasure of working with a custom cabinet maker. So Colleen had mentioned to us that she has a friend that loves to cook. He's in a wheelchair, and he is often bumping the cabinets. So she asked if there was any way, can we raise the toe kick? So we had the toe kicks built at 10 inches tall. So most or all toe kicks in the typical cabinet are only 4 inches tall. So in doing so, we were able to raise the dishwasher. So that makes it easier for someone in a chair to easily reach into the dishwasher, or someone that's standing. They don't have to bend down as far to pick something up out of the dishwasher. The main kitchen sink also has doors that are removable, and the base toe kick comes out as well for a person in a chair to be able to roll under. And we did something different with this one. We actually designed it so that we had a separate sink off to the right, and that's where the garbage disposal was. So anybody rolling under the main sink isn't affected by the garbage disposal. They have full range of motion. Pot filler was a big one for Colleen. She absolutely insisted she did not want a pot filler in the back wall because her friend would not be able to reach that. So we sourced a pot filler that was vertical and we could mount on the countertop. And then, of course, put on the side of the range so it's easily accessible. The hood, we found a hood that was able to be used with remote control. So you don't have to reach up and be able to turn it on or turn the lights on to the blower. So you could just use a remote. Glass doors, lighting inside the cabinets. These are all additional features that are just in this picture that are all UD features. As universal design became more prevalent for us, we began to become noticed, I would say. We were introduced to the Gary Sinise Foundation. Gary Sinise is an actor who has an organization, a not-for-profit, and he builds mortgage-free, specially custom-designed homes for severely injured vets and first responders. In 2017, he called us and asked if we would be interested in building a home in St. Louis for an injured police officer who was shot in the line of duty and unfortunately was a quadriplegic. And we were humbled and honored and scared to death because there was just a tremendous amount of additional accessibility needs that we would need to learn. But we had a baptism by fire, learned quickly, and we ended up building 3 homes for the Gary Sinise Foundation and then remodeling a 4th home for him. So Colleen's Kitchen is a 1-room universal design project. Like I said, we build custom homes. So we take that to the next level and we design the entire home with universal design features. So just going through these pictures of homes we've built. So this bottom left picture, you'll see there's wide spaces between the cabinets. So there's a minimum of 4 feet between the island and the other kitchen cabinets. You'll see the sink on the left is a more typical sink in the island. Whereas if you go straight ahead underneath this window, that sink has a roll under, and we put the faucet off to the left-hand side of the sink, so it's only about a foot off the countertop, and it is motion activated, so you just reach your hand and the water turns on. Picture just to the right of that is a zero-entry shower. Don't judge us on the windows that go all the way to the floor. That was a large private courtyard that this client had and insisted on that. But zero entry showers is an absolute must in every home that we build. The picture to the right of that, another zero entry shower, and this one is more of a wet room. The tub, the shower is all in one space and it's all zero entry. The seats, the bench is heated. We put blocking in the bench. We had grab bars for this particular client who needed grab bars in the bench and over by the tub. The shower system in this house was by Moen. It's called U by Moen. So the shower system could be pre-programmed. You could use your cell phone to turn the shower on, change the temperature, change the water from different valves. Top right picture, that is a typical zero entry at the front door. We like to do zero entries at every exit. At a bare minimum, we do the garage. Whenever our clients will allow, we will also do the front door and the rear doors to the rear patios. Sometimes they have different reasons why they don't want that, but most of the time they go with our suggestions. So. Just other typical practical universal design elements, pretty much every one of these is something that we incorporate into every home that we're designing. No step entries, minimum 42 is a standard for us. We use 48-inch hallways. Minimum 32-inch doors is a standard for us. We use 36. Lever handles on doors as opposed to knobs. Main floor living space. Zero threshold, curbless showers and anti-slip floors. Always blocking in the walls, in showers and around toilets for grab bars. At every toilet, you'll find a receptacle for a future bidet. Smart home capabilities are becoming more prevalent. Cabinets that are modifiable. That one is tough sometimes if you're using a manufactured cabinet. We generally use a custom cabinet maker, and we can pretty much do anything that we need to do. But in a more subdivision type home setting, that becomes a little bit more difficult. Here's some other real world examples of the planning that goes into universal design. So this bottom picture on the left, that's a subfloor, and when we're designing our homes, and this is a zero entry shower, so we always drop the subfloor so that we can pour the sand and cement to create that shower and build it up even with the rest of the subfloor. Picture to the right of that, that's a perfect example of how we do zero entry at garages, at front doors. Basically, we pour the foundations taller so that the floor joists sit inside of the foundation wall. This allows us to pour the concrete slab up to the top of the foundation and even with your finished floor. To the right of that, just an example of a 4-foot hallway. Top right picture, great example of a rear patio. There's 3 doors there that all lead to the rear entertaining area, all zero entry. As a side note, Therma-Tru is a manufacturer of doors, and they make one of the best residential doors with ADA sills. So we try to use those as often as possible. And top left picture, this was just a small remodel, kitchen, bathroom, and all we did was the shower. So we didn't have the ability to drop the subfloor in this case, but there are products on the market that allow us to go in. We can take out the 3/4-inch thick plywood that's on top of the joist, and this preformed shower base sits right on top of the floor joist. We block around it, and then we can waterproof that and float that to create that zero entry shower. Affordability and scalability. Affordability is a big topic in universal design, especially in the residential world. There's a lot of products out there that don't cost much more that are UD that we can use. And just some simple examples, lever handles versus doorknobs. A wider door is a couple dollars more than a narrower door. Taking a faucet in the bathroom or the kitchen and putting it off to the side of the sink instead of behind the sink. It's a simple move. It's much easier to access. Those are all good examples of not expensive items. There are some items that are more expensive, such as the zero entry shower and zero entry doors where you're, access from garage or front door where you're raising the foundation. But the whole point is you plan for it. So if you plan ahead and you do it up front, it's so much less expensive than when you have to do it at a later date. Community impact. I want to touch on multi-generational and aging in place benefits. So multi-generational living has become very prominent for us anyway. We've done 2 multi-generational projects in the last 18 months. And we currently have one in design that is a 16-acre, 3-home, multi-generational project. 3 families will be on this property. One of them is one of the gentleman is in a wheelchair. He's paralyzed from the waist down. He's in a motorized chair, but he will be able to access every home, patios, front doors, garages of each home. We have paths going around the whole property that he'll be able to use. There's a pond on the property that he'll be able to get down to. So it's all about the planning to make this happen. Vision ahead. The future's bringing even better, more advanced features for us. So we are incorporating a ton of home automation. We did a home in the last couple of years that had many voice-activated features. So we were able to use an Amazon Dot and attach it to a gentleman's wheelchair. He was able to use that, and anywhere in his house, he could voice activate music, the TV, change a channel, change the temperature in the home. We had 3 exterior doors that had automatic door openers that he could give a command, and he could go out to his rear patio where the fireplace was, or go out to his garage or through the front door. So advancements in home technology will really benefit us here. Architects, designing flexible spaces, flex rooms, extra bedrooms that could be converted, or a dining room that could be converted for something else. I happened to be online today and on Builder Magazine. This is from today's Builder Magazine. Fewer bedrooms in dual primary suites. Bedrooms in new build floor plans are changing from count to configuration. 20 years ago, about 75% of buyers wanted 4 bedrooms, 3 standard and 1 primary. Fast forward to today, and the majority, 55%, say that they want 3 bedrooms, 2 primary bedrooms, and a standard bedroom. Having 2 primary suites is desirable for multi-generational and blended families or for long-term guests. So it's becoming a little bit more noticeable. Before I came today, I went on the IBS 2026 website. IBS is International Builder Show. That's in February of 26. It's a huge show for the home building industry. Unfortunately, there's only 3 speakers on universal design. But we just need to get out there. We need to continue promoting. We love Starkloff using their outreach to promote universal design and educate. Education is the biggest thing we can do. Call to action. Builders and designers. Integrate 1 or 2 small features in your next project. You'll find it's pretty simple once you just start learning a little bit about UD. Homeowners, they can, as they're out looking at new homes that they're looking to purchase, they can look at the home and get a feel for its adaptability for future use. Does it have a wide enough hallway? Are these doors big enough for a wheelchair? Community leaders, that's the tough one. We need to educate them, get them to promote inclusive housing policies, maybe using tax incentives or some other idea. But in closing, we can start small, but we have to start now. We get asked quite often about trends. What are the latest trends in home building, the latest colors and things? Well, universal design is not a trend. That's our future. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Gilbertson. Here we go. I'm a principal with Trivers Associates. We are an architecture firm located here in St. Louis, but we do work regionally as well as nationally. We are always focused on creating work that has positive impact, hopefully lasting positive consequence. And so I was really honored that Rachel asked me to join you today and talk about some of our work in public places, and specifically parks. So over the last 50 years, we've had the privilege of working in a lot of our community parks. You can see just a few here. So we've worked in Laumeier Sculpture Park, Keener Plaza with Great Rivers Greenway, Gateway Arch Park Foundation on the Arch Grounds, and at the old courthouse. And today, we're working with St. Louis County Parks in Queenie Park, Clayton, Missouri, we're working in Shaw Park, and we're also working in Tower Grove Park. So for today, I'm going to be focusing on the work that we've been doing with Tower Grove Park since 2018, as well as some really exciting future projects that we hope will be coming online. So Tower Grove Park is a really great community place, and two of their, I forgot to describe myself. Rachel told me I might forget. So I'm only 5'2", I'm the shortest of the presenters. I am solidly Gen X, I have brown hair, and I'm wearing black clothes. So I was looking at the pictures of the people and what they're wearing, and it reminded me. So this is just a collage of pictures from many of our team members as well as community members experiencing different things in the park. And Tower Grove Park is about being a welcoming place and an inclusive place, but also, importantly, one of their mission points is to be courageous leaders. So it's always been a place that welcomes all people, and that's what they want to be going into the future as well. In the park, there are historic buildings. This is a National Historic Landmark Park. It's really an asset that St. Louis has this in our city. It's beautiful landscape designed by Henry Shaw. Lots of landscape features, botanical, it's like a botanical museum almost, but it's also a place of community. And so universal design comes into play at all three of these components of the park: architecture, landscape, and the ways in which we're able to gather. I'm going to focus primarily on access and inclusivity. And then if we have a little bit of time, I'll just touch on a couple details and the ways that we're thinking about things, not on the broad scale, but really down to every finite detail when it comes to universal design in the parks. So first, access. I don't know if you've been there, but this is a beautiful picture of one of, I think there are about 13 Victorian pavilions in Tower Grove Park. It is the world's greatest collection of Victorian pavilions anywhere in the world. So if you haven't been, you should check them out. We do have to focus on preservation when above grade. So we want it to look like it's always looked. We want to restore it to its original beauty. But at grade, we have a lot of ability to modernize, especially when it comes to accessibility and adaptability, and making sure everyone can experience these pavilions. So the first thing we look at is the paths. So there are historic paths that we have to honor, but we also can add new paths. So we think about what is it like when you're at an event? Can you get to the pavilion for an event? And if there's an event happening, can you still enjoy your time in the park and get around the event? Maybe just looking at the pavilion. So we planned the paths. And then we looked at the pad underneath the pavilion. So originally it was mostly dirt. You can see in the picture on your left, this was the existing condition before we started construction. So there were limestone curbs and uneven brick pavers, and pretty much impossible for certain people to actually, if you get invited to an event at the pavilion, to actually experience it. So we worked with an accessibility consultant on our team to and with all of these projects, I should say, there's only money to do a couple at a time. So what we wanted to do with this project is set precedent for how we can, like best practices in the park, how can this be implemented over time as the money is raised. So we decided to go with an exposed aggregate pad at grade and extend it beyond the roof line of the pavilion. So this allows people to get to the pavilion. There's new exposed aggregate paths also leading to the pavilion site. So now you can move around it, through it. We've aligned the tables in a way so that people in wheelchairs can pull up to the tables as well. In this case, we also added some lighting, which helps with safety and security and just general feeling of welcoming when you're at the park. This is another pavilion, the Turkish pavilion, where we implemented those same strategies. And because we're talking about the future today, these are 4 more pavilions that are under construction now. So the Old Carriage Pavilion, the Cypress Pavilion, Lily Pond Shelter, and the Humboldt South Pavilion are all under construction right now. And you can see they're very different, but they hold some of the same issues. So we're implementing the same best practices that we set forward with the original 2 pavilions at these next 4. Okay, we are also helping Tower Grove Park with master planning. The picture on the left here is one of my very favorite pictures of the park that we've ever seen. So it's a historic photo of people dressed in their Victorian clothing standing on lily pads. And I think if you look closely, there's probably some structural assistance. I don't think the lily pads are actually holding them up. There's a gentleman sitting in a chair on a lily pad. But the point of the picture and what this meant for our team is that this park was designed for people to be in the botanical spaces, to actually be up close and personal with the landscape design. So the picture on the right then shows today's condition at the lily ponds. So you can barely see a red concrete path that scoots along the edge of the photo there. You cannot get close to the lily ponds. And for anyone who's tried, even if you are able-bodied and mobile, it's muddy, it's not easy to trek through there and experience the ponds. So with the master plan, we partnered, Trivers and LJC worked on this, on really thinking about how people move to and through these spaces. So making sure that people can get to the lily ponds, that you can have spaces to sit and experience the landscape, the flowers, the trees, different ways to experience the site, and everyone can use the same paths. There's also an accessible bridge here, so you can even get over the water. Next, we'll talk about inclusivity. So I'm going to go back to a project that we completed in 2018 because this was the first time that the park embraced gender-neutral and inclusive restrooms. So they hadn't done that before 2018. It was still fairly new in St. Louis. The picture on the left shows a very dark hallway that used to lead you to men's and women's restrooms. The pictures on the right show the restoration and the renovation that we did to instead create 4 gender-neutral restrooms, one of which is a family restroom with a sink inside the restroom stall itself. So much lighter, brighter, feels better. Families can go there together. It's a much better space. And for the park, it was their first time realizing that these spaces are okay, they feel good, they feel safe, and they're built for everyone. So these are the floor plans, and so I'm just sharing these to point out that the exact same space, and actually less space, was used to create 4 gender-neutral restrooms versus the 2 men and women's restrooms, because instead of having a corridor, now it's actually usable space with sinks and a mirror that everyone can use. So we are under construction in this area of the park as well. This is right at Center Cross, is on the left side of the screen, and the Magnolia is on the top. So this is the kind of the center area of the park with the 2 historic buildings shown in gray at the bottom of the screen. So in orange, these are the places that are under construction right now. So we have a new event support building going in, and it will have new public gender-neutral restrooms. Restrooms are desperately needed in this area of the park. So we're really excited that the park is continuing the trend of using the inclusive gender-neutral restrooms. We are also implementing a new director's residence garden. That's shown in the top of the screen with the dashes. And then phase 2, which they're fundraising for right now, and we hope will be under construction maybe in a year, that's shown in blue. So that's a new head house for the greenhouse, which does have zero entry, and then an operations support building. So again, making that garden space more usable, and it will have private gender-neutral restrooms for the private events. And then just to share the differences between the two buildings and the gender-neutral restrooms. The event support building on the right is being constructed now. This is public, so it's built with CMU. We're gonna paint it, it's gonna be nice, but this is meant to be, public restrooms in a public park. The operations support building, we were able to use a little bit nicer finishes because these will be only open during private events. So here's a rendering of the building that's under construction now. We're using translucent panels at the area where you can access the public restrooms. There's also a pop-up kitchen for, so a coffee bar could go in there, or someone serving lunch with an accessible patio adjacent to where the food and beverages can be served. And these are just some construction photos to show you that it really is happening. We've been working on it for a few years, so it's really exciting when the things you're working on finally are under construction. And then this is a rendering of the director's residence garden. So phase 1 does include the garden. It has a flat, accessible path all the way around the garden, but we've also worked with LJC to plan the soils so that they're actually more solid than typical soils and easier to navigate across during a garden event. Whether you're in a wheelchair or wearing high heels, they've thought about that. In the background is the operations support building, which again, we hope will be under construction in a year or two. And then far, far in the future, this is like phase 3. It doesn't even have a number yet. It's so far in the future. But this is the big vision, that there will be a new entrance, sort of like a visitor center between the two historic buildings. A circle drive drop-off. Right now, it's really hard if you're coming to the park to find a place to park or to get dropped off. So just another place, thinking about wayfinding and orientation and making people feel like they know where they need to go. So this will be a new, very obvious kind of entrance for the park. So I did throw on here, if anybody wants to be a friend of Tower Grove Park, it all takes money, and so they're constantly raising money for these projects, but again, the point of all of them is to be more inclusive, more welcoming. That's what all of these projects are about. And then just a couple real quick details. This is a drinking fountain. So this is a National Historic Landmark Park, and I think we probably spent about 6 months trying to find the right drinking fountain for this park. So it needs to not detract from the historic features, it needs to be simple, but most importantly, it had to be accessible because we're trying to find a basis of design that they can implement throughout the park. So we finally found this product that has an accessible height fountain. It has a bottle filler. It also has a doggy bowl, which is very important for park visitors. And last, just a couple little things about the building that's under construction. We really, again, just thinking about how people move through spaces and how you help them feel welcome. Part of that is knowing where you need to go, which is one of the things Bart mentioned about the airport design too. So we try to highlight places where people are welcome by transitioning materials, using lighter, brighter materials, lighting, things like that at the service counter here, and then as well as where you enter the restrooms. And that's all. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much to our three presenters, to Bart, to Peter, and to Amy. Those were some fantastic presentations. Can we give them a quick round of applause again? Fantastic. Well, at this point, I would like to give everybody an opportunity to take a little bit of a break. So if you need to use the restroom, get a drink, and if you're in person, if you want to take some time to network. So the time is 2:19. So if we can all plan to be back here around 2:30, ready to go. Does that sound good? All right, great. We're going to go ahead and we'll take this time to reset the stage for the panel. In the meantime, enjoy your break, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. I hope you all had a lovely break. So we have decided, in order to keep you all on your toes, we are going to be switching things up a little bit. And we wanted to make sure we had enough time for question and answer. We had three fantastic and phenomenal presentations. And so we want to give the audience, both online and in person, an opportunity to ask any questions they might have. So we are going to go straight into question and answer. And depending on how long that goes, we'll see how much time we have for the panel. But I wanted to give you all an opportunity to ask any questions you might have. So we have a mic runner in the audience, Jessica. She's going to be working with us to get the mic to you all. And we have Katie monitoring the online chat in case there's any questions online. So considering those fantastic presentations we just had and everything we've talked about so far, does anybody have any questions for our panel?
How can we support deaf and hard of hearing individuals specifically with like aviation issues, like accessing to communication specifically, like with flashing lights, thinking about like at an airport, there's a lot of times that we don't really know what's going on. How can we bridge that gap of communication? Specifically with like gate changes, or if there's an emergency situation, something like that.
Yeah, well, thank you for your question. It's really important, and it's something that we don't necessarily implement all the time, but we should. You know, one of the things that we try to do is remove visual clutter, so at least the information that is available, you can clearly see what's important, as in wayfinding, you know, what's maybe less important, as in concessions, what's equally important is where the restrooms are. So providing a hierarchy in the signage and wayfinding, like I said, removing the visual clutter. A lot of airports are kind of going into kind of more quiet mode, so there's less kind of enunciations, and so more reliance on the visual kind of direction for gate changes, but I think definitely like finding out what specifically work for maybe flashing lights, or you know, an app on your phone that might vibrate. I think there's plenty of ways we can improve it even from there.
Just adding to that, specifically like what happened back in May, whenever the tornado happened, just how we were able to get that kind of information out to everyone. Such limited communication at that time.
Yeah, I'll start, but I've only lived in St. Louis since end of July, but I was here the week after the tornado hit, and I could see the devastation. So it's a little hard for me to answer. Obviously, you know, the city policies that need to clearly improve on communication. It's always hard in a situation like that. So I think maybe Amy or Peter, if you could talk about maybe your experience during that time, and from a designer's perspective, what you think we as a kind of not an organization, community, design community, could have done better.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering why you were asking me to answer it, but I forgot you didn't live here then. Well, so my particular experience that day, my son was graduating 8th grade, and there was a graduation ceremony. And what I saw that was maybe working more than the city announcements and things like that were the community coming together. I think just making sure we're taking care of each other and not necessarily relying on systems. I mean, it's great if the city can improve the systems. It absolutely needs to happen. But I think all of us recognizing people in our communities that don't have the same abilities, that maybe didn't hear sirens if they had gone off, making sure we're taking care of each other, I think, is really important. And what I saw happening, at least in my case, that day.
And I think that's what proper city planning is all about. And when it comes to universal design in the residential world and planning developments, if it's universally designed, we have single-family homes, we have maybe duplexes and condos and apartments all within the same community, and that community is building relationships now. And I think it's in addition to the city properly notifying everyone, but it's more about the community taking care of each other.
Hi, I was wondering on the Tower Grove Park project, if you experienced any challenges balancing the environmental priorities of it, being an outdoor space, wanting to be very natural, and also making it as inclusive and accessible as possible.
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't say it's just another challenge of the project, but it's something that's really important for us to keep in mind always, especially because it's a National Historic Landmark Park. So even though the park is using private donations and funding for the project, we still proactively go in front of cultural resources, the State Historic Preservation Office. We talk with stakeholders about what we're going to be doing in the park. The park also has, I think it's a level 4 arboretum. So their own staff is very skilled in terms of the trees and the landscape and all of that. So the client team brought skills to the table that were helpful to us. But the park, it's interesting because it's had a few different eras of development and focus. This is the first time in about 50 years that we've done new construction in the park. But again, it's time, and it's focused on creating more welcoming, inclusive spaces. And so the historic guidelines, the landscape guidelines, they all allow for that type of thing and for progress. And the park has never been stagnant. It's always evolved. It didn't have cars at first. So during a certain era, they added more roads. Then they built comfort stations with restrooms. And so today, now we're really focused on community events and community gathering and how we support that. So yes, it's part of it, but there are a lot of skilled people at the table helping us make the decisions on where to build things that we're building.
All right, any other questions? Oh, we've got one in the audience.
Hi, this can apply to anyone on the panel. When working in St. Louis, since there are so many historical aspects, whether that's the parks or in the buildings, or I've noticed a trend of redesigning maybe unused historical buildings and turning them into other forms of real estate, whether that's business or living, are there any challenges, or because I know there are additional steps taken or meetings may be had to maybe make sure there's preservation of those historical aspects, but are there any challenges or pushback or concerns that you all have on your teams, or when you are working with the city in order to make sure it is universally designed, or it is universally designed while still keeping those historical aspects?
Well, I can probably take that one. So I did talk to you about parks today, but mostly what I focus on is historic architecture and renovating historic buildings. That's part of the reason we're working with Tower Grove Park, is because they have historic buildings and it's a National Historic Landmark. So yes, the challenge is in figuring out how to do it in a way that's best for the people and best for the building. So I think there's maybe an easy cost solution that might add a ramp to the back of the building, but that doesn't give everyone the same experience. So I showed in one of the images the old courthouse. So that was our project. It's a very significant, very important building in terms of the entire country's history, as well as St. Louis. It also has 4 primary facades. So sometimes in historic buildings, you talk about maybe there's a secondary facade where you might be more apt to make changes. In the case of the old courthouse, they were all primary facades. So then it became, we installed ramps, one on the east and one on the west, because that gave people the most ability to move through the building from the arch grounds into downtown, or back from downtown to the arch grounds without having to walk around the building. It was the most equitable thing to do. But we spent a lot of time focusing on the exact details of the ramp, how to make it compatible with the building. It's actually reversible, so there's a cold joint below grade. This might be getting too technical. So it's kind of interesting to think about, though, that the courthouse should be here for another 100 or 200 years. Maybe we won't need a ramp. And so that ramp there's a cold joint below grade where it can be removed. It's actually cantilevered over the moat. It doesn't connect into the portico. So we took special care not to damage any of the historic fabric, but still provide the universal access. And we worked with the Universal Design Group, which included a lot of stakeholders with a lot of different abilities, informing us the best practices for that design solution. And they were brought to the table with historians, so everybody kind of understood all the complexities at hand. So that's an extreme example, but I also think it's a great example because it proves if you can do it at the old courthouse, there's no excuse for any other historic building to say, oh, we can't put a ramp or we can't get people in here.
And maybe I can add something to it, not from a historical perspective, because that's your purview, but just thinking forward, right? Our buildings that we build now, they're all going to be old at some point. We hope they're going to be historic, but we can't guarantee that. But use is going to change, and the people that use them are going to change. And so how can we still provide a building that serves the purpose today, but make it flexible for adaptation in the future, so that the things that Amy is talking about are easier to accomplish, and thinking beyond just access and mobility, but thinking about use, even going from storage to lofts, and going from office space to other types of functions. So it's something that is difficult, but I think the lessons that Amy kind of learns and shares with us are helpful when we design new buildings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Oh, we've got another one in the audience.
Thank you. I had a question about residential homes. I know a lot of what you presented had to do with people with physical disabilities. I wondered if you had done any renovations or any new builds for people who have visual disabilities or hearing impaired.
Not specifically, although we did just build a large home for an organization called L'Arche. It's L'Arche of St. Louis. They're worldwide. It's a Catholic organization, and they care for adults with intellectual disabilities. We just finished the project. It's in Brentwood, and it's a home that has, their patients are called core members, so it will house 4 core members on the first floor, and then 4 caregivers on the second floor. That home, although it is universally designed, it has a lot of ADA in this, and ADA, people confuse ADA with universal design. ADA is the minimum that we have to do. Universal design is what we're striving for, because it's more than ADA.
We've got a question online. It says, universal design is often seen mainly as accessibility, but its real power is in creating spaces that work well for everyone. From your work in home building, park design, and civic projects, what new ideas or partnerships do you think will shape how universal design is built into projects over the next decade?
Well, on the residential side, well, probably all 3, it's about, again, education. And as I mentioned, there's a large convention in February, and there's out of 200 speakers, there's only 3 that have a small part in a discussion about universal design. So we need to continue to promote and educate not only the general public, but also our city planners, our government, about what universal design is and how it benefits everyone, and how it is different than ADA.
Yeah, I'd say for me, 2 examples is, trying to avoid level changes for passengers the best you can, especially when you go into like older, maybe even Art Deco airports. They kind of pride themselves on the staircases and things like that, and they take up a lot of space, which we rather not pay for anymore now, and we make it functional. But it also creates a lot of conflicts with movement through the building. So now you have to add elevators, you have to maybe add escalators. You are separating potentially, the way people experience the building. So the project that I showed at SeaTech, the Seattle airport, where we decided to make this big feature ramp that everybody uses, it actually saved money because we didn't have to install elevators and escalators, and everybody used the building the same. So it's not always a burden, and shouldn't be, right? It's a creative design solution that leads to some of those great ideas, and I think that's what we're aiming for.
So I'll add, in terms of specifically the question about collaboration, I think especially for designers, it's important to bring people to the table that have lived experience with that are different than yours, always, in all cases. We, at the old courthouse, we benefited greatly from the Universal Design Group, but I was also on a panel at a museum conference, and other designers in other parts of the country were very interested in how that group was put together and who was on it. And it's kind of a voluntary thing that as designers we can do. We always talk about stakeholders for our projects, and making sure that the group of stakeholders you're bringing together is as diverse as it possibly can be. And so I think in that way, that collaboration was really successful. The other thing I'll mention is educating designers is probably top priority, maybe. We were talking in our office yesterday about how I was talking with Amanda about this, sustainable design. People associate, kind of dollar signs with that, but it's the right thing to do. So how do we infuse that in our projects without necessarily asking permission? We're just designing sustainably because we need to. And so universal design can be the same way. We're presenting design options to our clients. We don't need to present anything that doesn't, comply with universal design or stretch ourselves as much as we can. And we don't necessarily have to call it out. We should just be doing it. Hopefully we celebrate it at the end and use our projects as prototypes or proof points that this can happen, like Bart's example in the airport. But kind of being sneaky about it, as long as we know we should be doing it, maybe would be helpful.
Totally agreed. We do the same thing. We're sneaky and we don't tell them. So we may not tell them that you're going to have a zero entry garage, but every single client, once they walk from their garage into the house, they absolutely love it. They don't realize they're getting a receptacle behind the toilet, but these little things they eventually catch on to, and that's a good point.
Rachel, I have a question. I feel like technology, working at a technology company, very curious when we talk about airports, Bart. Where do you see technology being used kind of in an innovative, forward-thinking way? And as you're looking at St. Louis Airport, anything that you might do differently based off of some of your past projects, specifically around using technology to help with universal design and moving through airports?
Yeah, one of the things that we've been thinking about is kind of a personalized experience, and every airport is thinking about passenger experience. They call passengers customers and things like that. And so can we create an environment that adapts to passengers' needs? And that could be through, there could be a companion app with it. Now, there's always, when you have a lot of people together in one space, it's very difficult to make that happen. But as soon as we go to more digital signage that can do multiple functions, it can quickly change from advertising into a wayfinding sign, or we can have, apps with kind of augmented reality that can help people guide around the airport. So I think there's plenty of ways where technology can help. One of the obstacles that we find is that airports don't invest a lot of money in apps because you have an app for every airline, and people don't want to have an app for every airport because you have 50 on your phone. So there's a little bit of resistance in adapting that. But I think as soon as the benefits are clear, people will adapt and use that. So that's what I can think of now.
Great. Well, thank you for those fantastic questions. That's perhaps the easiest panel I have ever led. I do have one or two pre-prepared questions that I think maybe we could get to before we start concluding. And I did want to start by asking, what would a universally designed St. Louis look like in 10 or 20 years?
Well, on the residential side, as I'd mentioned before, it's going to be a pre-planned community that is filled with not only single-family homes, but also condos, apartments that are all zero entry, that are accessible by all. It's going to promote multi-generational living, and growth amongst its neighbors.
So what I would say as a newcomer, I haven't quite sort of seen everything that St. Louis has to offer, but what you typically want is, I think, a good public transportation network where transportation nodes are more than just stops. They are hubs of affordable housing, accessible housing, communities with shops and amenities. And so kind of building neighborhoods around access is, it's a symbiotic relationship, of course, but making sure that neighborhoods and access to them are better than what they are now. I think that would be a big driver for economic growth and just happiness of living in St. Louis, I think.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I totally agree. And St. Louis, I think our region maybe is growing in population, but maybe the city is going down a little bit. St. Louis needs to be a welcoming place. Our companies need to recruit and retain the best talent. Everyone who lives in the region is passionate about it. We want to see a brighter future. And I think universal design is absolutely a part of the conversation about being a place that welcomes all and supports all and where everyone can come and be successful. I know this is adjacent, but St. Louis, we're a Mosaic ambassador company. So that's all about welcoming immigrants to St. Louis City and helping them feel welcome, helping them acclimate, helping them be successful. This is the same thing. We want to welcome as many different types of diverse people as we can to the city to promote a better future. And I also hope in 10 to 20 years the Tower Grove projects are done and implemented.
Yeah. Great answer. Okay, I'm going to ask one more panel question before we go to the conclusion. I do want to give our audience a heads up. We are probably going to run just a little bit over time, 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you for sticking with us and being patient. For our last panel question, I wanted to ask for those in the audience, whether they're designers, maybe they're advocates, or community members, what's one way they can help advance universal design in St. Louis?
Well, start, as I mentioned earlier, start small, but start. For designers, they can start implementing small items, whether in the residential world, again, wider hallways, wider doors. Some of the things get a little bit more expensive and are a little bit more difficult to always get the client to accept if they are not in need. But if we can educate and teach them or convince them that doing it now is much less expensive than doing it in the future when it's going to be required, like that's important.
Yeah, I would say, again, disclaimer that I'm new here, but what I see in at least my neighborhood, I live in Lafayette Square, there's a lot of organizing in a neighborhood, and I think especially for public projects, when people organize and make sure that the developers, the city, really understand what the people that live there want and need, and make that clear. Hopefully people listen. If they don't, they shouldn't be in the positions they're in. But people can listen, but if there's nothing being said, it's hard to hear the message. So I think that's what I would say, and I feel that that's kind of a big thing in St. Louis. People organize and advocate already, and so maybe just kind of finding that critical mass and push it just one bit further.
Okay, I'll give you an easy one. Continue coming to the StarCloth events because you learn something, but I'll challenge you to bring a friend next time so that there's twice as many people listening. Tell your friends about it. Talk about universal design. I think the more we understand what it is, it makes zero sense not to do it. So I think the more people that start to understand what it is, the more our cities and communities will demand it. So yeah, keep coming and bring a friend.
Thank you so much, panel. And Amy, thank you especially for the most brilliant transition ever, because now I can talk a little bit about the future of Universal Design Programming at Starkloff Disability Institute. This is actually our last event in 2025, which is very bittersweet for me, because it has been so much joy putting all of these fantastic events together for you all, but I'm gonna miss this, although I won't have to miss it for long. In 2026, we're going to have 3 different webinars offered for all of you throughout every single season. Basically, we're going to have one spring, one in summer, and then later on that year, next year in the fall of 2026, we have the Universal Design Summit coming back. Bigger, better, badder, cooler than ever before. It's going to bring in people from across the country. We're going to have continuing education units and so many different cool speakers and panelists and opportunities to learn about universal design. If you are not signed up for our mailing list yet, you want to make sure that you are, because we have so many cool things around the corner. In terms of the event for today, some quick housekeeping for that. I will be following up in the next day or maybe Monday with just some information from today, how to access our mailing list. I'm going to send out that survey, the satisfaction survey I mentioned in a previous email. We really value your feedback, and we really want to hear how we did today and how we can continue to improve. So be watching out for that email with some fantastic resources. I have so many heartfelt thank yous I want to extend. First of all, for our presenters and our panelists. They did so much fantastic work for us. All of those slides you saw, they put together. Everything in terms of preparation for the questions and just being ready and responsive and ready to pivot. So if we could give another round of applause for our presenters and panelists, they were great. Additionally, I want to extend a big, big thank you to Worldwide Technology for hosting us. Jessica, Lisa, everybody operating the technology, you all have been absolutely fantastic. To our team of amazing interpreters that made this event more inclusive, thank you. To Starkloff Disability Institute for supporting this event and providing me with backup for it. Thank you so much. I mentioned at the very start of this event today how this 3-part series has really impacted me and how I've thought about my past growing up with disabilities and feeling like the environment and the places I visited were not welcoming and not inclusive, and then being able to go forward into the present and be able to have this event today. I never would have thought that this would be as big of a success as it was. It was even better than I could have thought. And then thinking into the future, being able to collaborate with other fantastic people like our panel, fantastic people like you all. Thank you so much for coming out and showing how much you care about universal design. We're really building on the shoulders of giants. Folks like Ron Mace, who coined the term of universal design. Folks like Selwyn Goldsmith, who created the idea of the curb cut or the drop curb and the curb cut effect. By coming together as a St. Louis community, we are building a future where we can all enter in through the front door, where we can all celebrate events like this together, where we can talk and better understand each other and learn more about the disability community and how to make sure that everybody feels truly included. For me, that is a future I can get behind, a future that I believe in, and a future that all of us at Starkloff Disability Institute are going to continue to work towards again and again and again. So please sign up for our mailing list, stay in touch, and I hope to see all of you back in 2026. And please, if you have a moment, come up and say hi to me. I'd love to get the opportunity to talk to some of you in person. We'll be following up with email very soon. Thank you again for attending, and this is our last event around universal design at Starkloff Disability Institute for 2025.